Okay guys, hi there. Let me just move my chair in a minute. Hi there, Mark here, the Dorset Bumpkin, back again today with another video based on Magic the Gathering. Now you remember yesterday I went through with you the formats, well the limited formats of Magic the Gathering, because it's a trading card game, but it's also a collectible card game, and it's played in many different ways, and there's many different formats of play. We went through the limited formats yesterday. We talked about the sealed deck, the booster draft and the standard, those three being the most popular limited formats that players play. Today we're going to look at the other way of playing, which is the constructed sets. Now, just to explain the difference, because I didn't really think I did it yesterday in the video I did. Limited means limited, so you're limited to the cards that you have to field from your boosters for sealed deck and booster draft. So that's telling you you're limited to those cards. With standard, when it says limit, it means that you can only use cards from the most recent Magic sets that have been released. Booster draft and sealed deck, the sealed deck is limited. It means that you can only use the cards from the 6 packs that you open in sealed deck format to build your deck with. Likewise as well for booster draft, you can only use the 3 boosters that you use to build your deck from in that. So that's why it says limited. Constructed is a very, very different ball game. It's completely opposite. So with constructed, you are going to go to your local game event. So say for example Friday Night Magic or FNM at your local game store. What you often do is you turn up there with a pre-constructed deck. So this is when you pick a deck and you build, when you take with you some decks that you yourself have built. And it's not unusual for guys, for players to turn up at the event with a rucksack chock full of different decks that they've built out of all the cards they've got at home. That's fine. So that's the constructed side of play. Now, as I say, there are many different formats in constructed play as well, and they all do different things. Now we already covered one already with standard, because although it's limited, it's also a constructed, because you can only build a pre-constructed deck out of the most recent Magic releases. So at the moment, I believe in standard they can play with Ikoria, which was the most recent set that was released, Theros Beyond Death, which was released at the beginning of this year, Throne of Eldraine, which came out in October last year, Core Set 2020, which came out about this time last year, and I think, if I'm correct, they can still use, I think you can still play in standard with Ravnica Allegiance and War of the Spark and Modern Horizons. I don't know, I think Modern Horizons is not actually standard, but you can certainly, I'm pretty sure you can still play with War of the Spark and Ravnica Allegiance in standard. When Zendikar Rising comes out in October, which is the next expansion after the core set, what will happen then is all of the older sets will rotate out. So that would therefore mean, if I'm correct, Throne of Eldraine, Core Set 2020, War of the Spark and Ravnica Allegiance, all of those 4 will no longer be legal in standard format. So when you construct a standard deck, you can only take it from beyond Theros Beyond Death up to Zendikar Rising. That's my understanding of it. So yeah, that's standards. We covered standard yesterday in great detail. So let's have a look at some of the other formats that you can find as well that are constructed. The next one, the first one we're going to talk about is modern format, simply called modern. Now, I think it was last year or the year before, I can't remember where it was. They released a special set known as Modern Horizons, which was specifically designed for players to use the cards in modern format. So what's modern format then? So again, what you do with modern is you construct a deck which has a minimum of 60 cards, like with standard. There is again no maximum deck size, provided you are able to shuffle that deck with your hand. Otherwise it's just ridiculous if you can't shuffle too many. You have cards falling out of your hand all over the place. So if you can't do that, then that's too big a deck. And you can also have up to 15 cards in your sideboard. Now, again, as with standard, the rule applying to this, aside from your basic lands, you can only have a maximum of 4 copies of any cards in both your sideboard and your main deck. That's Modern. And at Modern, what sets that apart from others is with Modern you can use cards that were released way back in the Mirrodin block right up to Throne of Eldraine from the end of last year. So those are the sets that you would pick your cards from for the Modern format. So that's quite a lot of different packs. That's a lot of expansions and lots of sets you can build your decks out of. So that's the Mirrodin block right up to the Throne of Eldraine, which was released in October last year. Those are all the cards you can build a constructed deck for Modern out of. Let's have a look then at the next one. Now the next one is probably one of my favourites. And it's really good for more casual play, and that's the Commander format. So basically with Commander, again, you construct a deck of your own from your cards that you have. You can buy pre-constructed Commander boxes from your local game store and online. You can buy pre-constructed Commander decks, but it's a bit more fun if you do your own. Commander is also known as EDH. Now EDH stands for Elder Dragon High Lord. So that's the other name for Commander. So basically what's Commander all about then? So with Commander, you build a deck of 100 cards. Okay, now how it works is for this format, you pick one Commander card. So I've got an example here next to me. This is one of my Commander decks that I've constructed myself. Now, your Commander, it has to be any legendary creature that's been released in any of the sets throughout history. So it has to be a legendary. You cannot use a Planeswalker as a Commander. Although having said that, there are, I think it was 2018, Magic did release a set of Commander pre-constructed decks which used a Planeswalker as the Commander. But you can't usually use a Planeswalker as your Commander unless it specifically says on the card that you can. But generally, when you do Commander, you build your deck around a Commander card, a legendary creature, and your 99 cards you build around it. So, for example, here's one. This is a legendary mythic card that was released with the Rivals of Ixalan block. So there, I don't know if you can see it. Probably not very well. So basically, the card is Kumena, Tyrant of Orozca. So he's a legendary Merfolk Shaman character. Now, with the Ixalan block, Merfolk were one of the main cat creatures that featured in that block, along with human pirates, vampires, dinosaurs, and the main kind of planeswalkers from that set were Jace and Huatli. They were the main planeswalkers. Vraska as well and Angrath also featured, but the main ones were Jace and Huatli. So yeah, that's Commander. So you build, basically, just to give an example of Commander, I've got another one here, I won't bother going through that one. So you've got your Commander, your legendary card, and the other 99 cards of your deck are built around it. So it can often with this deck that I've built here around Kumena, I have got a total probably roughly of around 40 odd land cards. So yeah, because obviously you're playing with 100 cards, so you can probably go with between 42 basic lands to promote your deck. And then the rest of the deck is made up of spell cards and other creature cards as well. It's also as well, what's really important, a good thing to do with Commander, or any deck building to be honest with you, it's always good to kind of build your deck so that it has synergy. Now I've talked about this before, so what's an example of synergy? So you could build a deck where all of the cards in that deck have the cycling mechanic. So your deck's full of cards that are cycling cards. So yeah, and that's what I mean by synergy. So yeah, that's Commander. That's one of my own decks that I've built myself. Not played it yet, but so that's Commander. So that's 100 cards. Commander's a little bit better because it's more casual, because often it's a multiplayer format. So you can play Commander with 3 other players. So what generally happens, 4 of you sit around a table. You've each got a Commander deck, and you play casually, and you can bung in all kinds of cards. You can have as many legendary cards in there, you can have as many mythic cards in there. if you feel like it, if you're able to, you could even build the whole commander deck from legendary cards, which would be a really powerful deck to do. So yeah, that's commander. So yeah, again, just the basics of commander. Some rules. There are some rules. I've already said that you have to build your deck around a commander card. So you have one commander, which is a legendary card, and you have 99 other cards, which are made up of your basic lands, your artifacts, your spells, and other creatures. You also can only have one copy of a card in commander. So none of this up to 4 copies. You can only have one copy of a card, and there's no sideboards in commander either as well. So yeah, only one copy of each card. The exception against that is your basic lands, obviously, because you need a lot of those to generate your other cards. But yeah, your creature cards, spell cards, artifacts, etc., etc. You can only have one copy of those cards in a commander deck. Now, also, what's really important, going back to my commander card, Kumena that I just showed you, you'll notice that he's green and blue. So what that green and blue islands and forests, they are what are called his colour identity. So basically, all of the cards that you build in your commander deck have to be green or blue. Now there are some cards that have an exception. Sometimes there might be you might build a green or blue deck with a green or blue card that's actually got also maybe a red attack, a red ability. That requires you to use red mana. So that red then becomes also part of the colour identity of your commander deck. But yeah, it's really important to remember that the commander, okay, so his colour identity, as I say, for Kumena's case, it's blue and it's green. And you'll see that on the card, and it's also up here in the mana as well. So yeah, that's the commander's colour identity. As I said, it's a multiplayer format, and usually you can play up to 2 to 6 players. So you can play more than 4, and 6 of you can sit around the table and play. It's a free-for-all multiplayer format. The difference with this, with standard and most of the limited formats, you start with 20 life. With Commander, you start with 40 life. So your life starts with 40. And also in Commander, you have a command zone, which is where your commander should start the game. And you take turns in a clockwise order, which, to be fair, I mean, it's pretty much the same in most Magic formats. So yeah, and the last player standing is the winner. So basically, whoever is left with still playing, so once everybody else has been wiped out and their life goes down, and one player remains, that one player is declared the winner in Commander. So yeah, that's Commander. A lot more casual, more fun as well, and it's multiplayer as well. So it's more sociable as well. That's probably, if I'm honest, that's probably the constructed format that I most would love to play. There's another one which we're going to come on to in a bit, but Commander is going to be my favourite. So yeah, that's Commander. So let's move on now to another one. I'm conscious there's going to be another long video. Hopefully it won't be too long. We have something called Legacy. So let's talk about Legacy. What's Legacy format? So again, Legacy, you build your deck, you construct your deck with a minimum of 60 cards. And again, there's no maximum deck size, provided you can still shuffle that deck with your hand. And again, you can have 15 cards in the sideboard as well. Now, with Legacy, okay, again, aside from your basic lands, your combined deck and sideboard, because you have sideboard in this as well, they can only have, again, like most other formats, a maximum of 4 copies of each card, okay? So basically, what sets Legacy apart from the other formats in constructed? What makes them a bit different? Now, okay, so Legacy. Now you can build your Legacy deck out of all Magic card sets. So any Magic card set, whatever one it might be. Plus, there's also some following cards. Now there's three specific cards that, as far as I'm aware, are probably banned in most formats, which is why they're talked about. But they can be used in Legacy. That's Sewer of Estark. If I mispronounce it, I do apologise. Windseeker Centaur and Nalafni Dragon. So they're all cards that you can also use in a Legacy deck, along with any cards from any of the Magic card sets that have been released over the years. Also, cards from special sets and expansions, such as the From the Vault Magic sets that Magic bring out now and again. Dual decks, they do dual deck sets as well, and Conspiracy. It's okay to use those cards as well in a legacy format as well, on provided they are provided that they're not provided on the date of release of the expansion or special set. So yeah, that's legacy. There are a number of ban cards, so I won't go into those. But yeah, so that's legacy format. So let's move on then to the next one. So next we've got what's called Vintage. Now Vintage is quite a popular format in Constructed. So let's talk about Vintage. What's this all about? So again, Vintage can consist of cards from all Magic card sets, so any of the Magic card sets, including Sewers of Estark, Mana Crypt, Windseeker Centaur, and the Lafney Dragon, which I mentioned as well as with the Legacy set. They can be used as well. And again, you can use special sets and expansions from the Vault, for example, dual decks, Conspiracy, etc. They're also legal in the Vintage format as well. Like with most of the other formats, you have a minimum of 60 cards, and there's no maximum deck size again, provided you can shuffle your deck unassisted, and you can have a sideboard of up to 15 cards as well. And as with all other formats as well, you can have no more than 4 copies of any individual card in that deck, aside again from the basic lands. So that's the Vintage. Not a lot of difference, to be honest, I don't think, to Legacy. I don't quite know what the difference is there between the two. They're pretty much the same, it seems, but there we go. That's Vintage. Let's move on next to the next one, which is Brawl. Now, I don't know if Brawl is played much these days. Speaking to general people, I don't know that it is, but Brawl is pretty cool. It's a mixture. So basically, Brawl is a bit like Standard, and it's also a bit like Commander. As with Commander, you build your Brawl deck around a specific legendary creature or a Planeswalker. So, in this case, unlike Commander, you can use a Planeswalker in your Brawl deck. So you build your deck around either a legendary or a Commander, but the restriction is that it has to be a Commander. Sorry, it has to be a legendary card or a Planeswalker only from the standard pool of sets. So the current rotation. So that's where it's similar to Standard. So you can only use cards for your Brawl deck which are in the current standard rotation sets. And you can battle against friends, or you can just simply do one-on-one, or you can do multiplayer as well in Brawl. Now, with Brawl, so you have your Commander card, which we talked about, a Planeswalker or a Legendary. You build 59 other cards around that Commander, okay? And again, those cards have to be taken from the standard rotation currently. Alright, so you're quite restricted on what you pick for that. And like with Commander, you can only have 1 copy of each card you put in your Brawl deck, aside from basic lands again. You can have as many of those as you need. Okay. As with Commander as well, your legendary Commander cards, your Planeswalker, they have a colour identity, and all the cards in that deck have to fall within that colour identity of your Commander. And again, that also encompasses coloured mana symbols in mana costs and in rules text. So for example, you might have a card, as I said with Commander, that's maybe green-white, okay, but in the rules text or your activated abilities, there may be another ability that requires another colour to use that ability. So that also becomes part of the Commander's colour identity. So yeah, that's Brawl, very similar to Commander, in as much as that you can only have 1 copy of each card in the deck as well. With 3 or more players in Brawl, you start with 30 life. If you're only 2 players are playing Brawl, you start with 25 life, so that's a bit different to Commander. Again, you can play 2 to 6 players in Brawl. Now you also, as with all the formats, you sometimes have to have a mulligan. Now the first mulligan is 7 cards. Then each mulligan after that results in one fewer card, so 6, 5, 4, etc., etc., etc. If you have to do a mulligan. And again, your commander card starts in a command zone, as it would in Commander, and a commander can be cast for their mana cost, plus 2 mana more for each time they're put back in the command zone. So there might be a case where you use your commander, it gets beaten, puts into your graveyard, you bring it back to your command zone, and you have to pay an extra 2 mana to use the card again in your command zone. And as with Commander, it's the case of whoever's the last player standing, they're the ones that are the winner. So that's Brawl, very similar to Commander, only that it takes cards from the standard pool. Okay, so we also have Team Unified Constructed. So basically what this is you build a deck of 60 cards, okay, and now it's called Unified Deck Construction Rule. So basically what that means is no 2 decks in the decks you build in this unified construction, no 2 decks can have the same card. So every card has to be different in each of those decks. So you can't. So for example, if one player is using, say for example, Naturalize, one of the cards that you can in Magic, in a team constructed format, that therefore means that any other players in this that he's playing with him cannot use that same card. So again, it follows the same rules as the other formats. 60 card deck minimum. You can have, there's no maximum deck size as long as you can shuffle the deck in your hand, and you can have your 15 card sideboard as well. So yeah, that's the Team Unified Constructed. So yeah, so that's another great kind of a team one. So you can play with up to, I don't know, I think maybe 2 or 3 team members, or 4, however many of you want to do that. So that's it. That's the Team Unified Constructed format. So you're building, you build 3 decks. So you have 3 of you playing that, and you build 3 decks of 60 cards. And as I say, again, 4 is the maximum copies you can have of each card. And as I say, you can't have in those 3 decks all cards that are used by the 3 players have to be different. You all use the same cards that in those decks. So yeah, that could be a bit more interesting, a bit challenging perhaps. Now let's move on to the next one, which is Block. Okay, now Block is interesting. So this is quite a cool format as well. So basically, years ago, before modern Magic, they used to bring out cards, expansions in what was called a block. Now a block normally consisted of a trilogy of sets, sometimes 2, but they don't do that so much now. They've kind of gone away from that, but it used to be a thing years ago. Now this format, block format, means that you construct your deck. Again, it's a minimum deck of 60 cards, but all of the cards that you use in this deck have to be from a single block of a Magic release. So for example, you could decide that you only want to use cards in the Amonkhet block. So you'd use cards from Amonkhet, Hour of Devastation, or you might want to just do cards from the Kaladesh block, which is Kaladesh, Aether Revolt, or you might want to do cards only from Shadows over Innistrad. So you'd pick cards from Shadows over Innistrad, Eldritch Moon, so on and so forth. There's been so many different blocks they've released over the years. So yeah, with this format, you build your deck around that specific format, that block, which is again quite challenging, but it gets you to use some of the older cards that maybe you've not used before. So that's block format. So as I say, you have 60 cards. That's the minimum as per the other formats. Only from a single block. There again is no maximum deck size, so as long as you can shuffle that deck, you can have as many cards as you want in your deck. And also you can use a sideboard as well in block format, which is 15 or fewer cards. And again, except your basic land cards, you can only have no more than 4 copies of each individual card in that block. So yeah, that's the block constructed deck, which is kind of fun, I think, personally. Okay, let's have a look. Let's move on next to the next one. So next one, which is called Two-Headed Giant. So let's talk about Two-Headed Giant. So Two-Headed Giant, again, it's a multiplayer format, okay, where 2-player teams battle against one another. So you play in pairs, and you're one team against another pair, which is the second team. Okay. So what you do, you take actions in this game as a team rather than individually, which you would normally do in all the other formats. There are some rules to Two-Headed Giant that are different to the other formats we've talked about. So, for example, each team has a shared life total of 30. Each team takes their turn together. So that means they draw as a team, they attack as a team, they block as a team, and they go for all the different phases of Magic each turn as a team. Now, whichever of the teams goes first, they would skip their initial first draw step. And teams do not share any resources other than life. So that means basically that players can't share cards in hand or mana, so they can't share their cards with each other. The thing to remember with this is when a card references you, or if there's an ability on the card that says you, that means each individual player. So it's not just you; it means each individual player. So, let me say, for example, let me think of a card. So I've got a card here. Let's find it. Give me a second, I'll just find a card that I can try and give as an example and just try and explain what I mean by that. Yeah, I can't seem to find a card. Choose an example. Yeah, okay. Here we go, here's one. So this is a card called Feat of Resistance. It says in the text, put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control. It gains protection from the colour of your choice until end of turn. So with Two-Headed Giant, when it says put a +1/+1 counter on a target creature you control, that would apply not just to you, it would also apply to your teammate as well. So yeah, that's what it means by that with Two-Headed Giant. So yeah, what else? What other rules do we have? So yeah, each player can block any creature that's attacking them, their teammate, or any planeswalker their team controls. So basically, if your opponent is attacking your teammate's card, a creature card, or whatever, or their planeswalker, you, as well as your teammate, can block them, that attack. That's what that means. And yeah, basically you confer together as well as a team, you share information, and you strategize together as well. And again, the mulligan rule is in place. So yeah, 7 is the first mulligan, 6, 5, 4, etc, etc, etc. So yeah, that's basically Two-Headed Giant. And just one final thing to read out about Two-Headed Giant. Effects that read each opponent or each player, they affect each team member separately. Okay, so for example, there's another card called Rabid Bloodsucker. When it enters the battlefield, each player would lose 2 life. So that means each team loses a 4 total life. So each player in that team, because there's 2 of you, loses 2 life each. So each team is using 4 life, and obviously your opponents would lose 4 life as well, because it says each player would lose 2 life. That applies to all 4 players that are in play. So yeah, that's what that means. So that's Two-Headed Giant. Let's have a look at the next one. Sorry, this is a long video, but you know, I could have broke it down to a second video, but I wanted to go for it all together. So yeah, this next one, and this is probably my favourite one of all. It's the one that I really like. and that's because it's simply a budget format. It's called Pauper. It's quite a recent format. Around about 2016 that it first became a format, but it took Wizards of the Coast a good 2 or 3 years to recognise it officially as a format in the game. They've now, about 2018, they finally recognised Pauper as a format, and they've now included it as another way to play Magic and construct decks. So it's another form of constructed play. So what sets this apart from the others? Well, it's called Pauper for a reason. Basically, every single card that you use in your constructed Pauper deck has to be a common card. Yeah, that's why it's called Pauper. So you can't have any rares, you can't use any uncommons, unless in the past that uncommon was printed as a common, then yes, you can use it in Pauper. But if it's never been printed as a common rarity in any of the Magic sets in its Magic's history, you can't use it in Pauper. You can't use rares and you can't use mythics. So yeah, it literally is only common cards that you use Pauper for. So again, with Pauper, you have a minimum of 60 cards in your deck, and again, there's no maximum hand size as with other formats, and you can have a 15 card sideboard as well. Like with other formats, you can have no more than 4 copies of an individual card in that deck. So I've got a deck here. This is one I've built. It's a Pauper deck that I built. It's completely and utterly made up of vampire cards. So vampires are all my creatures. So just have a quick look at it. There we are. That's my deck of 60 cards. Okay. I won't go into it today. We'll talk about Pauper in a separate video because it's a format I particularly love. It's my favourite format, and I'm going to talk about that in a separate video and devote more time to it. And that is my 15 card sideboard. So yeah, so I've only got literally 60 cards in this deck, and 15 card sideboard. So I could potentially, and I might well do, perhaps in the Pauper video, add some more cards to this and make it a bit bigger, because it's no, as I said, there's no maximum deck size. So that's a Pauper deck that I've built myself. So yeah, that's Pauper. I say we'll talk about Pauper, and I will devote a separate video to Pauper because it's a format I specifically love. And what we'll do is we'll actually build a Pauper deck together on the video. And that brings us on to the final one to talk about today in Constructed. Now I apologise again, this has been a very long video, but I wanted to get through with this. I could have split it into 2 videos, but it's going to be a bit boring for you. So this is why I've gone through them all today. So it's a bit of a longer video, so apologies on that one. So yeah, the last one to talk about is Pioneer. Again, Pioneer I think is quite a new format to Magic. So what is Pioneer? So again, it is a non-rotating format, and you can feature cards from Return to Ravnica onwards. So Return to Ravnica was a set that was released I think somewhere in 2013, maybe something like that. I think it's 2013 that Return to Ravnica was brought out, was released. So yeah, basically Pioneer, you can use any card for Pioneer from Return to Ravnica right up again to the Throne of Eldraine, which was released at the end of last year. So again, it's a minimum of 60 cards in your deck, no maximum deck size, again, as long as you can shuffle your deck, and up to 15 cards in a sideboard if you want to use a sideboard. And as with the other formats, yeah, same story, you got it. Basic lands are the only cards that you can have more than 4 copies of in your deck. Every other card has to have no more than 4 cards, and that includes whatever you use in the sideboard as well. So yeah, that is Pioneer. So basically, that is it. That's all of the constructed formats. As I say, apologies, this has been a very long video, but I wanted to go through all the different constructed formats with you all today. And as I say, we will do another next video. Magic will be about Pauper, and as I say, I'll talk about Pauper in greater detail, and we'll build a Pauper deck together on the camera. So that'll be fun to do. So yeah, if you enjoyed today's video, again, apologies it was a long one. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. Leave a comment, like this video if you did like it, and of course subscribe to my channel if you're here for the very first time. I will see you all soon in another video. Take care, keep safe, and thanks again for your tons of your support. And yeah, love you all and keep them peeled.